Welcome back to the 2-Minute Warning. Today, I'm going to go over the Cleveland Browns schedule and try to predict their record for 2021. But before we get into that topic, question for those of you viewing, what do you think the Cleveland Browns record will be? And of course, to remember, this year, the game and the season is going to be 7 games, so keep that in mind when predicting your record. But getting straight into it, the NFL schedule came out today, and the Browns have a pretty good schedule to look at. But getting straight into it, looking at number 1 with a face in week 1, it's going to be the Kansas City Chiefs in Kansas City. And Browns fans, I'm telling you straight up, I have them losing to the Chiefs. I do, but don't disappear yet because I got quite a big win streak coming up. Kansas City Chiefs, this is literally 2 of the 3 best rosters in the NFL facing each other in week 1. So, of course, anything can happen. Week 1, weird things happen. I mean, the Jaguars last year in week 1 beat an Indianapolis Colts team that eventually became a playoff team, and the Jaguars, they never won a single game again in that season. So week 1, anything can happen. And if the Browns surprise me and come out on top and beat the Chiefs, I won't be surprised, actually. But just Kansas City, they're always hot early in the season. And the Browns, they have so many new players on defense. Jadeveon Clowney, Greg Newsome, Grant Delpit, and Greedy Williams to come back from injuries. John Johnson, Troy Hill, OJK. This Browns defense is so stacked, and they executed the offseason so well. But I think week 1 is going to be too early for them to click right away and gel right away and have that chemistry right away. I think there's going to be some growing pains in the possible first few weeks for this defense to click and finally be there together. Therefore, I think it might be just enough for the Chiefs to edge them out in week 1. Week 2 versus the Houston Texans at home. I could go in depth, but if Deshaun Watson's not playing, the Texans are the worst football team in the NFL. Browns are winning, not much to say. Chicago Bears, this will be interesting. If Justin Fields is in, that means he's pretty good to already start that early. If Andy Dalton is in, I think the Browns can handle Andy Dalton. Bears, they do have a defense that you shouldn't disrespect by any means. Khalil Mack, Eddie Jackson, Robert Quinn, Raquan Smith, Alden Smith. You guys know the deal. Danny Trevathan. It's a pretty good Bears team defensively, and then Allen Robinson on the offensive side. Bears aren't a joke, and like I said, if Justin Fields is in, clearly he's a good enough rookie to be starting pretty early, and the Browns should not, just think of it as a cupcake game, but just the Browns roster, number 1 backfield in the NFL, number 1 offensive line in the NFL, very stout receiving core, Baker Mayfield, top 10, top 12 quarterback, defense. By week 3, they might be able to finally click and get there. I think that could be a top 10, top 5 defense. Browns, I think, can definitely handle the Bears. So currently heading into week 4, I have them being at 2-1. Week 4, though, at the Minnesota Vikings. This is a tough one because this will be a defensive matchup. Vikings have one of the better defenses in the NFL, getting a very good linebacker quarterback in Eric Kendricks and Anthony Barr up front. You got Daniel Hunter and Dalvin Tomlinson. In the secondary, you added Patrick Peterson. You have Xavier Woods, you have Harrison Smith, and then on offense, Justin Jefferson, Dalvin Cook, Kirk Cousins, Adam Thielen, Irv Smith. They stole Christian Darrisaw in the draft. This is a good Vikings team that I think could be a possible wild card team. That means they're a playoff team. And the Browns, even if you are better than the Vikings on paper, you don't want to mock and just think any playoff team is a cupcake game. This is a serious game, but then again, I do think the Browns roster is better, and I do think they'll come out on top. We got 2 quarterbacks, Kirk Cousins really safe and conservative, and Baker Mayfield, he's willing to do whatever it wins. He'll put his entire body on the line to die for the goal line and win that football game. Kirk Cousins, I feel like he would hold back. So with the grit and just how good this Browns roster is, I do think they'll top the Vikings. Week 5, this is one of my favorite matchups against the LA Chargers. This is a tough one that no matter what I predict now, week 5, it could go either way, pending both teams being healthy. Browns, great defense, like I said, and the Chargers, they will have a completely rebuilt offensive line with Corey Linsley at center, Brian Bulaga and Rashawn Slater at the tackles, and then interior, you got Matt Filer and Oday Abushi. It's a pretty good rebuilt O-line against a rebuilt defense. We're going to see, who matured faster into week 5 of both these teams finally gel and have their chemistry, and how's that matchup going to go. I do think the Chargers have an advantage in the quarterback position. I do think Justin Herbert and Baker Mayfield. I do think Herbert's better. Yes, I do. I don't care how young he is. He's put up numbers that Baker never has, and he's only had 1 season compared to Baker's 3. Say what you want about the different offenses they had. Herbert, I am giving the edge to Baker, but head to toe, top to bottom, roster-wise, I do think the Browns will barely edge out the Chargers in this tough game that I'm going to love to see. I think it's going to be very offensive. There's going to be a lot of firepower, and this is going to be a shootout type of game. But Browns defense, I think they're going to hold the Chargers back just a little bit. But if the Chargers come around and sneak a win, I won't be surprised. But I do have the Browns winning. Cardinals, and this is a tough streak. Vikings, Chargers, Cardinals, that might be 3 wild card teams that the Browns got to go back to back to back against. But like I said, this is a top 3 roster in the NFL. They're going to hold their own in most games. Number 6, Arizona Cardinals, like I said, are week 6. Another one that will be tough, but I do think the Browns can handle them. Denzel Ward, he's not going to just eliminate DeAndre Hopkins from the game, but I think with Denzel Ward having Greg Newsome, Grant Delpit, Greedy Williams, John Johnson, Troy Hill, Cardinals don't have that many good receivers, and I think this Browns defense is going to overpower Kyler Murray and DeAndre Hopkins. The pass rush is going to get after small Kyler Murray, Jadeveon Clowney, Myles Garrett, Takkarist McKinley, Malik Jackson just towering in on Kyler Murray is not going to be a good result for the Cardinals, so I got the Browns winning there. Week 7 versus Denver Broncos. If Drew Lock is on this team, similar thing to the Houston Texans. The Broncos aren't that bad, but the Browns, I don't see them losing to Drew Lock. I just don't. I like this Broncos defense. Von Miller, Bradley Chubb creating the pass rush. You got in the secondary, an extremely good secondary that could go toe-to-toe with the Browns. The Broncos they drafted Patrick Surtain, they added Ronald Darby, they added Kyle Fuller, and they already kept Kareem Jackson, Justin Simmons, Bryce Callaway on offense. They're not a joke between Cortland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy and Noah Fant, but the Browns, OBJ, Rashard Higgins, Jarvis Landry, Austin Hooper, David Njoku, Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt. Browns are just too good this year, and I do think they'll beat the Broncos, especially if Drew Lock or Teddy B, whoever is at quarterback, neither of them are going to be able to top this Browns powerhouse team. Pittsburgh Steelers, this is where the baton is finally passed to the Browns, and they finally start to become the big brother in that division against the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think it'll be a good game. It'll be a good matchup. It's a division rivalry, and like I said, Steelers have been the big brother over the Browns the past 2 decades, so it won't be an easy win for the Browns, but I do think it'll be a close win that they will eventually win out. Like I said, a good game. The Steelers aren't a joke. I know Big Ben is, declining, but they still have a good defense, and Minka Fitzpatrick, Joe Hayden in the secondary up front, Devin Bush, TJ Watt, Cameron Hayward. That's a good Steelers defense that the Browns shouldn't make fun of, and they won't. And that's why it'll be a close game, but the Browns will win. Bengals, another up-and-coming team in that division that I think could possibly jump the Steelers as well, but I don't think they'll jump the Browns. Joe Burrow is going to make it competitive with Jamar Chase, Auden Tate, Tyler Boyd, T. Higgins, but I think that defense cannot hold its own against the Browns offense, and I think the Browns will win this one. New England Patriots, this is interesting. The Browns, they struggle against the Patriots because Bill Belichick is just so cerebral. He's such a good head coach. But Cam Newton, Mac Jones, I don't know if either of them are going to be a serious threat. Patriots absolutely executed in NFL free agency and in the draft as well. I think they did a pretty good job. Free agency getting Jonnu Smith, Hunter Henry, Kendrick Bourne, Nelson Aguilar on offense, obviously in the receiving core. And then on defense, they got Christian Barmore in the draft. They got Jalen Mills, Stephon Gilmore's coming back. They signed Kyle Van Noy, Devon Godshaw from the Dolphins. This is a very good Patriots roster, but similar to the Broncos, similar to the Texans, there's zero quarterback really to lead them. And I'm not saying Mac Jones can eventually be good or Cam Newton won't be better with the Patriots now at the second year. But against this very well-rounded Browns team that doesn't have a hole in many places on this team, if any, Browns are going to beat them. Lions, I could go in depth, guys, but I have a very strong opinion that the Browns are going to beat the Lions, so I don't want to go in depth. Ravens, this is a tough one. At Baltimore, I do think the Browns will lose. I think they'll split it with the Ravens. I think they'll each, win their home game. I think they'll split the series, play it twice. Not much to go in depth. The Ravens are still electric, and I do think the Browns will win out in this division, but Ravens, that is a tough one to beat. I think they're going to just beat each other at their home game. This is really going to determine maybe who wins the division, but if they split, that's a win for the Browns. They had a close game last year with the Ravens. The first game wasn't close at all. Second one was close. I think now that they're getting closer, they're going to finally top them eventually, but at home, they will lose to Baltimore. Electric Lamar Jackson, J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards. They got guys to the receiving core. They added Sammy Watkins. They added to the draft. Defense, pass rush is pretty weak for the Ravens, which is a benefit to the Browns because the Ravens' pass rush wasn't the greatest by any means, and then they lost Yannick Ngakoue and Matt Judon. So Browns, I do think will get them when they play them at home, but away, I just think Lamar Jackson's too electric. So heading into the bye week at week 13, I do have the Browns being 11-2. Sounds crazy, but like I said, the Browns have one of the best rosters in the NFL. I know, Cleveland Browns, but they just do. Head to toe, top to bottom, there are not many flaws on this team. Week 14, Ravens, that's when they play them at home. Kind of just said it. I think they'll beat them at home. I just think the Browns will be able to handle the pass rush at home, be able to handle the secondary, and they'll be able to, I don't want to say shut down Lamar, but contain him to an extent. You got Anthony Walker in the linebacker core with OJK, excuse me. I do think the Browns will steal a game from them at home, so they'll split the series. Week 15, Las Vegas Raiders. I don't like the Raiders this much this year. They have specks of talent: Derek Carr, Josh Jacobs, Darren Waller. They added John Brown on defense. You added Casey Hayward. You got Javon Morig. You got Yannick Ngakoue, but still, there's no depth. There's no real firepower, and I think the Browns definitely outmatch the Raiders head to toe. Packers, another loss for the Browns. I got them at 3 losses right now. Aaron Rodgers, if he doesn't play, Browns are winning this easily, no debate. But assuming Rodgers comes back, they make up, they fix it, he gets an extension, whatever it is, I think at Green Bay, at home for the Packers, I think Aaron Rodgers will be able to out-duel Baker Mayfield. The quarterback matchup is just too heavily favored in the Packers' way. Week 17, Pittsburgh Steelers. Again, the baton is being passed to the Browns, and they will sweep the Steelers this year. Yes, I do think they'll finally be the big brother in that division. Again, any division game in the AFC North will be a tight game, and it won't be one extremely dominant, in my opinion. AFC North is probably the second best division of football. It's just how it is, and I think the Steelers will lose, but it won't be easy for the Browns. They're going to have to fight for it. And then Week 18, same thing for the Bagels. I do have the Browns winning, but again, you cannot just overlook it by any means. Joe Burrow is going to try and be a comeback player of the year, and I think he might, but Browns, they're going to be too much for Burrow to deal with. So overall, I have the Browns finishing 14-3. Call it bold, call it what you want, but when you have one of the best rosters in the NFL, top 10 quarterback in Baker Mayfield, top 3 offensive line, number 1 backfield, top 5, top 10 receiving core in OBJ, Jarvis Landry, Rashard Higgins, Austin Hooper, David Njoku. It's a great offense. And then on defense, it's going to take some time to develop. It's going to be some growing pains, but it'll get there to be a top 10, top 5 defense. I could go through it again, but you guys already know the deal. I've went over the roster. This is one of the, if not the best roster in the NFL, and it's well coached by Kevin Stefanski. 14-3 sounds bold, but it is actually extremely reasonable in my opinion. I like the Browns this year. I think they might make an AFC Championship. They might make a Super Bowl, but I definitely have them at least going pretty far in the playoffs. But as always, guys, I do want to hear your predictions. Mine was 14-3, and I got them making a deep playoff run, but comment yours down below. And as always, guys, thank you for watching 2-Minute Warning.